Alright guys, we got Chain Lightning. Let's take this right into, not a Pit 113, let's just take it into a nice little 85. And then I'll go over all the gear after the run. Brief overview is this is mainly a Chain Lightning build, and we opt to have Splintering on the gloves just to give it a little bit of an extra oomph when you are mobbing. As you can see, it's smashing the 85. After I kill this pack, I'll pop my incense and stuff just to show you like what you should be running. I'll back off real quick. They didn't die, so ideally what I run is Resourcefulness. If you're not having issues, you can run Advantage. And then I run Redamine Buzz, Chorus of War, and Song of the Mountain. Well, I don't need Song of the Mountain right now. So ideally what I would actually run, because let's see, well, my resistances are good, so I guess just Chorus of War and Redamine Buzz are fine. And if your resistances aren't fine, there's a type 2 incense called Soothing Spices that gives you 10 resist to all. I'm managing without resist all elements on my boots, and that's very feasible once you start to get a lot of Paragon, because there's so much all resist in the Paragon. The clumping's really nice for, it's twofold. The raiment clumping, it's good for the splintering aspect, and it's also good for the axial conduit procs. And I know people are really tired of splintering, like, oh, it's just a splintering build. It's really not. You can test that yourself by playing it with Lightning Rod over splintering, and you'll notice like it has better boss damage with Lightning Rod, but what it doesn't have is as good of mobbing damage. So Splintering is there purely to balance things out. Splintering is not a good bossing build. That's why we just take it on the gloves, just for the 1%, just for the 1x value. Fortunately, I have no game sound, but I think you guys do. But as you can see, it nukes these guys pretty well until they go unstoppable. But this build, I've only really touched the tip of the iceberg with the gearing for this build. Well, sort of. Like my wand, with my sword, and my focus are just 8 out of 12. But it's just a blaster. You just boop around, you blast. I really wanted to show a blast, I would have done a T80, but I like to use 85 typically. On stronger builds, like A-tier builds, I like to use 85 as my benchmark. Like, can it cruise through an 85? Then it's A-tier to me. Axial Conduit will hit for a lot, but I can't tell which ones are the Splintering huge procs because of the Eternal Cooldown, or which ones are the Axial Conduit. But trust me, I've been playing with and without Splintering, and I just prefer... I didn't like Splintering on the amulet. I liked it just on the gloves. The amulet was too much focus on Splintering, and the boss damage felt really bad. Splintering on just like a 1x aspect value felt like the sweet spot to where it was like a pure hybrid. It didn't lose its identity, and it wasn't like, it didn't just become a splintering build, because that's what happens the second you put it on the amulet. When you have it on a 1x aspect slot, it's sort of like, it's an accessory, like a handbag, a purse. And this, yep, you should take us in right here. This build does a really good job at stacking up Enlightenment. When Enlightenment's active, we have a 2x damage buff. And that's because of all the Ice Blades spamming. You can run Teleport or Lightning Spear in where I have my 3. That one's up to you. The advantage of Lightning Spear is you'll get out more Conjurations. And the advantage of Teleport is that you'll have better movement. And when you are CC'd, you'll be able to break it more easily. Because right now the only way to break it is either through right here as your reinforcement, or Flame Shielding. And my guys are pretty standard. My mercenaries, I always run Subo for the map hacks, and then I run right here his Bastion to give me like a little bubble, like when I'm CC'd or You can set it to be injured as well. But boss kill's not terrible. It was really bad when I had Splintering on the amulet. It's just like, Splintering just does not do well at bossing, but the game is like, you know, half of the game is farming tormented bosses, and and the other half is farming like mobs, content, hordes, Undercity. So I think Splintering is like a extremely valuable asset to put into a build, and I don't think it takes away from the identity, and it still feels like I'm playing Chain Lightning. All right, let's work on upgrading this, and one more. Okay, let's get into the build. So this build is another cookie cutter shock build. We have Perdition as our helmet for 60% damage. It solves our crit chance so that we can drop Asu's boots, give some ranks to core. We run Raiment. You don't have to run Raiment if you don't want to. You can run Duriels, and something that we'll be looking into when Shroud of False Death comes back into play is replacing Raiment with that. I still really like the clumping, so I don't know if it's going to replace it. But False Death is another damage option that gives you a ton of max life that doesn't make you glacier. Next is a single aspect value Splintering. As I've been rambling about, it completes the build. It makes it feel really good mobbing. I love it. Doesn't overwhelm the build with it just all being Splintering damage. It just gives it that little something extra that it needs to really mob like a champ. And I think it's in a 1x aspect slot, it's worth giving up like Lightning Rod, or you know, it's worth giving up a damage aspect for it because it provides the same value, if not more, than a damage. It provides more value than a damage aspect when you're mobbing, and it also provides the same value that a damage aspect would provide when you're bossing. A note: I see a lot of Chain Lightning builds. If you are going to run this as pure, you drop Splintering for Lightning Rod. You do not run both Lightning Rod and Splintering. Lightning Rod only buffs Chain Lightning damage. Splintering is its own damage, so every other aspect that you take needs to buff both Splintering and your Chain Lightning damage. So that's why we have Conceited, Stormswell, and Shredding Blades. All generic damage multipliers. You do not take any specific multipliers. You want to scale the whole build, and you want to scale this aspect right here. Do not run Lightning Rod and Splintering together. Next is Axial Conduit. Really whatever you can get here. The most important thing on this is honestly the aspect value. You want it to be as high as possible. And then after that, I'd say the least important thing I think would be ranks to Chain Lightning, and then resource gen's important, damage reduction, and chance for Chain Lightning to hit twice. I'm not sure which is the most important. I think it comes down to where you are at with your gear. Resource generation and maximum is like always really good. I'd say that one's probably is the most important, but this is just what I managed to get. We do a pretty good job at keeping the CLs up, because you can see I had 10 out there without even like hitting enemies. And that's because my combination of choice for runes is to run Pock with Lum. That's spend 5% of your max resource, and it restores primary resource. I'm not and then I run Tam, and then this is your flex spot. I personally, because I don't like being so squishy, I run Mott, which is the Dark Shroud, because you get 40% DR. But the option here is that if you do want full damage, you run Barbarian's Warcry, which is Ohm. I'm a firm believer in Mott. I will try and slot that on every build that I can. The Dark Shrouds are so powerful. Next, we move on to the boots. So the boots are where it gets a little tricky. This is the only slot that you can get armor in. If you don't manage to get GA armor, you need to do one of two things. You need to either, alongside crit strike damage on the amulet, you need to have armor percentage, or you need to always be running a Song of the Mountain. Don't forget your incenses. They're really important. You get so much extra life from running Redamine Buzz. And then if these are your type 2 incenses right here, this is max life. And then this one's all resist. Like, increased maximum all resist. So if your resists aren't shored up, you should be pretty good. But as you can see, I put a bunch of ranks in Potent Warding, and you get them from Tel Rasha as well. I go from 50 all the way to 70. So I get 20 all res, 20, 21 all res just by casting. So, and that's really awesome. The boots, you're going to need attacks, reduce, evade boots. These are where your Orange Herald goes. That's so you can keep your unstable currents up all the time. You want freeze tempers for your utility tempers because of the Hoarfrost passive in the skill tree. Ideally here, you're going to want armor and max life. Well, you're going to want armor and mana per second. And then, honestly, I may take GA all resist. I may take all resist out of the planner and just leave the max life there because it's super comfy. You can solve, as I've shown, you can solve the resistance without all resist roll there. Next, I opt for a sword. I've been using swords this season, especially on something that has a flat damage aspect value. If you didn't know, this value will change corresponding to what weapon type you're running. Its base value is whatever it is when you're running a wand or a dagger focus. And then if you're running a mace or a sword, its value gets multiplied by 1.1 to offset the fact that you're attacking slower. And if you're running a staff, its value is multiplied by 1.2 from the base. So be on the lookout when you're buying axial conduits, because the aspect value, it may seem like it's in a really high range, but they could have screenshotted it when they had a staff equipped, and then it'll look like it's this higher value. So just your standard stuff: int, max life, crit damage, chance for chain lightning to hit twice. I've opted for conceited here. It's a bit of a flex spot. Like I said, you don't take lightning rod, and I don't think unbroken tether is worth it. I didn't really add anything. I just want all the damage I can get. Next is your focus. So the focus is really important. It might be a little hard to get, but ideally you're gonna want crit strike damage, cooldown, and lucky hit chance to restore. It's very important that you have a lucky hit chance to restore. You only need one roll. And if I had gotten like a masterwork hit on this, I would have been sitting pretty, but I'm not resetting because iron chunks are tough right now. You need one lucky hit restore roll somewhere, and that can either be on the gloves, the sword, or here. If it's on the sword, I would give up crit strike damage for it. And if it's on the gloves, these aren't even the right gloves, but it can't go on the gloves. It's got to go on the sword or the focus. Either give up crit strike damage, or you pair it with crit strike chance and cooldown here. This is where Storm Swell goes. We have really good uptime on our ice armor. As you can see, when I press my 2, you can watch it. As I spend resources, it's just constantly coming back. It's very nice. This makes for running, if you don't have perdition, or you don't want to run, if you don't want to run raiment, you don't have to. If you don't have Tyraels, you can just run Snow Veiled on like one of these slots. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have really good uptime on ice armor, and you will always have it back within 5 seconds to keep that unstoppable always going. Next is Talrasha and Starless. Not too much needs to be said. You're always spamming ice armor and ice blades and a lightning skill. You're alternating, so you get that damage. And we have Flame Shield to round out the third stack. The cooldown reduction on here is really important. Next is Starless Skies. Preferably GA attack speed, but take what you can get. Anything is fine, and ideally Masterworks on attack speed. You're trying to get your attack speed as close to 80% as you can. That way, when Enlightenment goes off, you get 100%, and during Unstable Currents, you're at 125. I don't exactly know what the breakpoints are, but I'm sort of just going to assume they're the same as Frozen Orb. So with a sword, you're probably aiming to hit above 122.5. That's my guess. Lastly is the Amulet. Amulets are hard. Ideally, the bare minimum you want is Conj Mastery. The rest is really whatever you can get. Dev Blaze is good. Elemental Dominance is okay. Intelligence is great. Even Max Life is good. It's not too big of a deal. And also, the cooldown's fine. Just try and get a nice amulet. The tempers for here are flexible. Well, the crit strike damage is always taken, but the next temper is really flexible. I sort of picked one that went through all of my build, like that works for all of my builds. I believe in the planner I have resource generation because that's really nice, but you could have evade cooldown reduction. I have familiar duration, just so it's not even working right now, but it will be on Thursday. But that way my familiars last longer during unstable currents. It's just sort of what I landed on. That temper is a bit of a flex, whatever you need. It's a good slot to take an armor temper. That way you don't have to worry about it, and it can work for every build. Let's go into the skill tree, which I'll actually go over. But first, we'll start with the enchantments. It's simply Ice Blade enchantment and Teleport enchantment. You got your teleport, you got your attacks reduced evade boots. As you can see, we're evading around. It's very nice. You got the clumping. And as you can see, we got our dark shrouds all around us, so that sort of offset the glassiness from Raiment. And then Ice Blade Enchantment just to get more Conj Mastery stacks and help produce all our cooldowns. As you can see, I just started and we already have 4 Ice Blades out, and they're going to go chippy choppy. So let's go into the skill tree. I believe the skill tree is actually representative of what's in the planner. So we have your 2 in Firebolt just to progress. Next, we move on. I slapped 3 points in Potent Warding. 4 are from Tel Rasha. This gives me 21% all resist. That helps shore it up. That's how you get it. Elemental Dominance for more Chain Lightning damage. And we max out Chain Lightning. I got a lot of ranks from a lot of different places. And I opt for greater Chain Lightning. I don't find that I need the mana regen from the whole crackling energy loop once I'm fully kitted. So this gives us 30% more damage. Just a single point in Flame Shield. We just need it. Just for those small times when we actually need it. I'm only able to get 3 points in teleport. You can take some points out of other places if you don't, if you find it's not necessary. But every time we teleport evade, we are getting the shimmering for 30% DR. I max out Glass Cannon. If you're feeling too squishy, you can always take some points out. Next is Ice Armor. I always take 3 ranks. I try to always take 3 ranks in Ice Armor. That way I can, as you can see, I get a 67% max life barrier. And then when combined with the protection passive, it takes me to 97%. You can't have a barrier greater than 100% of your max life. Enhanced gives us some mana regen. And then I take Shimmering Ice Armor, as stated earlier, because it's letting me keep my Ice Armor permanent. The standard things apply in the Conjuration section. We go for Summon Ice Blade so that when we're chippy choppying, it reduces all our cooldowns. The protection passive's really good. You may opt to take more points and align the elements from somewhere else because that's nice for elite DR. We take all the Lightning Spear nodes. That way they're critically striking and stunning. It really helps for stagger, as shown by the Duriel kill video where I staggered him and was able to one-phase him. We take the max in Conj Mastery. I'm able to get up to the max stacks that I think you would be able to get are probably 7 or probably 10 ranks to Conj Mastery. That sounds about right. 7 or 8 from the amulet. I digress. Mana Shield for DR. And then important here is the familiars. As stated many times in a lot of my videos, when familiars are not on your skill bar, they will default to fire familiars. So when you pop Unstable Currents, you will make familiars. And as you can see, they are fire familiars. They all come in, and hopefully this stays the same Thursday. It doesn't get broken, but I have all these fire familiars, and they're hanging out. And they should be lasting a lot longer than they are because of this familiar duration temper, but that's currently not working, even though it says that it's working in here. But the enhanced familiar is how you provide all your burning. We don't need any points in Icy Veil because we have such good uptime on our Ice Armor. We don't need it to last longer. We are rushing Devouring Blaze. I have 5 from my amulet, but this is a ton of damage for our crit strike, and everything is burning. Next is 3 points in Hoarfrost. These are a bit of a flex. If you don't have Lucky Hit Freeze Tempers, remove these. If you have Lucky Hit Freeze Tempers, these are very strong. These help you deal more damage during boss stagger and when you freeze the enemies with the utility tempers. These are also flex points. I take Fiery Surge. If your mana is really good, you don't necessarily need these, especially if you get GA resource generation on here, or you get some masterwork hits on it. Everything should be fine. But I had some flex points, so I took the 3 in Fiery Surge, just so when I'm mobbing, my mana is really good. And then I make my way over here to Warmth. I simp for Warmth. I think it's the best passive in the game. For me, it's just so nice. The healing damage, dot damage, poison especially, is very potent this season. Something is up with it, so I take this to combat it. 3 points in elemental synergies. We have three shock skills on the bar, so that's 9% damage that we get on all our shock damage. This one's a no-brainer, 12% CDR. And I found with CL, you really only need 1 point Unstable Currents. I found more points to be unnecessary, but you can take more. You can always do something like this. If you're really hurting, you can start to pick points out of other places. And as some of the flex points that I've talked about, you can always put them in here in Electrocution so that you're tankier. The passive of choice is Enlightenment, and it will be for a long time, unless the other passives change. You get the huge mana regen, the 20% attack speed, and the 25% damage when you are Enlightened, and because of the amount of non-physical damage that this build is able to get, most Sorc builds this season get around 3,000 additive damage, 1,000 of which comes from non-physical. So when Enlightenment is active, they all add together, so you now have 3,000 lightning damage. So what that equates to is it's about a 62% damage buff when active. When you times the 1.25 damage that's base with Enlightenment times the 62% that you get from the extra non-physical additive, you are dealing 2x damage. And we have very good uptime on this. Unfortunately, there's no mobs so it's not stacking up fast, but unfortunately there's no mobs, and there have been some issues where Enlightenment's not stacking up properly. There's a bit of an ICD. But when there are mobs, you get more Ice Blades. So you can cast Ice Blades more, and it stacks up really fast. That was a bad showcase. This Paragon is the same setup as in the planner, but it's just laid out differently because I made it on the fly. But I'm opting... So we start with our starter board. I take Tactician. That boosts our non-phys and our damage to elites. I opt to grab a lot of the max life nodes, and in this build specifically, because we don't have Duriels and because we don't have Rakanauts to provide us with all resist, I take all these resist all elements nodes. Next, I boop into Enchantment Master for Elementalist. When you're first starting off, you'll probably rotate this board and just pass through it very quickly because it's very expensive to get all of these nodes up here. But eventually you'll get them. Enchantment Master is very good. It reduces the time that our teleport enchant goes on. As you can see, it's on a 7.4 second cooldown. It's on a 33 second. You need to spend 33 seconds in cooldowns for Ice Blades. And if I take it off, let's go down here, take it off. Ice Blades goes to 40, and this goes to 9.2. It's very good. Elementalist is great. We're hitting enemies with all forms of elemental damage, so we get 15% damage. Boosts our rare nodes, again, more non-phys. This board's really good, specifically because of this cluster right here. This non-physical damage and 7.5 attack speed just has been really helping out. Your next board will probably be Static Surge. I think that's what it is in the planner. It might be Fundamental Release, but Static Surge is pretty solid. Let's pop in here. So the rare node. After spending 74 mana, your next cast of CL or CB will make enemies vulnerable, unnecessary, but it restores 10% of your max mana, and this scales with your resource generation. So basically, let's see, 74 mana, we are at 26 cost. We are down to 13 cost. So I think every 5 or 6 casts, we're going to get 10% of our max mana back, which will be 17.6 mana, and it will multiply by all our resource gen. So it's nice. You may as well take it. There's some really good nodes around here too, especially these ones. These resource cost reduction, which I'm missing the extra node on a little bit, just a little bit shy, but the resource cost reduction is really nice. There's crit damage here, which helps splintering. There's lightning damage, which is great. And there's a bunch of max life and all resist up here. And even up here, there's this huge amount of max life. Static Surge is a really chunky board in terms of max life, resource cost reduction, and crit. All right, so Fundamental Release. Been talking about this one a lot. It's 30% damage all the time, basically. I opt to put Flame Feeder here. I had Control on the planner for a while, but all my builds are the same now. Tactician, Elementalist, Flame Feeder, Unleash, and Destruction. Anything that's direct damage, it's those 5 glyphs. To keep it consistent, don't need people leveling extra glyphs. I don't like Control. It's not good for bosses unless they're staggered, and I like Flame Feeder. If you have Control leveled, you can use it. It's totally fine. They're interchangeable. In this slot can really go Control, Flame Feeder, Exploit. If you wanted to, you could put Reinforce there, or you could put Territorial. Like anything's fine there. This is a flex one. You can put whatever the hell you want. It doesn't really make too big of a difference. But we have more crit strike damage here that I'm missing, and I'm missing all these wrecks. Oh, it's terrible. But we have more resist all elements here. DR Vuln. Next, we'll move up to Frigid Fate. So 60% damage here to all enemies that are vulnerable. And because Static Surge was so chonky, I was unable to reach all these extra rare nodes. But there's max life here, there's lucky hit chance up here, there's DR vuln up here. But I was able to go and grab this vulnerable damage. I like Unleash. I always take it on my last board because there's usually a fat chance that I'm hitting these rare wrecks unless I have an active Chorus of War, which mine is not active, so that's why I'm not meeting any of my wrecks. But it boosts my magic nodes, so the vulnerable, the non-physical, and the dexterity nodes are especially important. Alright, that's the build. I like it. I think it's really strong. I hope you guys like it too. There's really nothing that's going to be changing with this build come the patch notes on Thursday, so I think it's pretty set in stone. But I do have to revisit Charge Bolts now that they made some changes to Charge Flash. So once Thursday drops, that's going to be the next thing I'm working on, and then I am going to be testing out the new Incinerate aspect that they're buffing. They're making it scale with Incinerate ranks, so we'll see. It could be really good. I don't know yet. All right, I'll catch you guys. All right, we're doing some hordes. I'm having the absolute worst luck with the boons, but I'm slaying. I'm going to showcase 3 different aspects on my gloves just to show you that the builds sort of all look the same. The first wave is going to be Splintering, then I'm going to do Accelerating, then I'm going to do Lightning Rod. And then I'm going to kill the bosses with Lightning Rod on. My overall pick is Splintering. As you can see, these splinters are going off, killing everything. But I haven't gotten a single... I don't have Hellborn. I got no. As you can see, this is a point where you would want teleport right there instead of lightning spear on the bar, but I'm greedy, so I'm greeding for damage. What is it, Juno? Alright, this is the worst Aether of my life, but as you can tell, the build's shredding. Alright, we're going to go put Accelerating on our gloves now. And look at that. Alright, so this is Accelerating gloves, and we finally just got our first Hellborn. It attacks really fast with Accelerating. I'm using an attack speed potion right now. I think I'm ending up around 145% attack speed. And everything's getting instantly obliterated. Splintering is really not needed. I just sort of prefer it because it clears all the little giga trash everywhere just to help like progress waves faster and stuff, so that's why it's great. But as you can see, this build nukes. Not really having any mana problems with that lucky hit restore roll. One's really all you need. I just saw 13 CLs out. I'm not even using the max resource potion. I'm running an advantage. Now we're going to go put Lightning Rod on after we kill this last Hellborn. And he's dead. Alright, so we have lucked into another Hellborn, finally. It's a bit too late for the Aether for this run, but this is Lightning Rod. 25% chance to deal 90% more damage, doubled against bosses or crowd control enemies. This works out to a 45% damage buff against CC'd enemies or bosses. And it will prefer elites as targets, or well, CC'd enemies. This is definitely the hardest hitting variant. The Accelerating is like the most fun. I think Splintering is the most well-rounded, and I think Lightning Rod is the hardest hitting for single target. But Splintering excels when mobs are grouped up, especially when they're grouped with Raiment. But this one's going to give us our highest boss damage. And that's what we're going to use to take on the Council. I read a lot of comments about Splintering, and I just I feel like I need to really clear the air about it on how it affects builds. It scales very strongly, but the ICD makes it a little bit awkward to use because it's not going off all the time. But they got nuked. Alright, let's go kill the boss. Alright, bosses are about to spawn, and this is Lightning Rod on the gloves. Let's see how it does. Definitely a single target shredder, seeing some 200 million damage procs, and we're saving Gelib for last, and he's CC'd. Let's see if we can get a fatty. There's a lot of damage ticks, didn't see anything too crazy, but for all intents and purposes, it's shredding. Alright, I'll catch you guys.